So this is really amazing, very exciting for me. I've, of course, grew up listening to the few recordings of Emanuel Feuermann that the whole world knows. And, you know, names like Eva Reifenberg are just names I read in the encyclopedia. But that's your grandmother, that was his wife, right?
Yes.
Yes. So, I mean, to bring this to life is completely amazing. I mean, what can you tell me about the early Emanuel Feuermann, how he started the cello, when he met Eva, his wife? Anywhere you want to go with that? We'll get the whole story.
I should say, I think half of what I know is from folklore, from family in my life growing up, and then half what I know from the biography, some like details that maybe I wasn't told that I filled in the spaces. I know his early life, he was from Kolomea, which at the time was Austria, the part of the Austrian-Hungarian Empire, but it's now Ukraine, and it was a Jewish ghetto, and they were poor. And his brother Sigmund started first on the violin.
His brother was older.
Older brother.
Yes.
I don't know by how many years, but a few years, I guess. And he was a prodigy. Like, it happened very quickly, I think. And my grandfather Feuermann would, I think the story is that he used to play the violin like a cello between his legs, and was
I see. Wow.
quite quickly quite adept at picking up violin, like Paganini things or what have you. And then I think maybe around 5 years old he started to play the cello. And very quickly they were both prodigies. And what I've learned from the book more recently is he was they were hustling they were prodigies, but it wasn't the way I think of a prodigy today where you're groomed and all these things. They were just trying to make money, it seems like. Besides being great musicians, the other side of it was that was a way to earn money for the family.
So many Jewish musicians coming out of the ghetto at that time, they played in cafes and street corners and everything.
And I think they did that.
Put a potato on the table in the evening, right?
Yeah. And then they were so talented and they were noticed in that time that I think my grandfather's premiere, he was maybe 7 years old or something when he played with an orchestra the first time, 7 or 9.
I don't know what it was. I know that he played Haydn Concerto with the Vienna Philharmonic. You know, how much higher can you go than that, when he was 11.
Right.
So I'm sure he had some important concerts before he got there.
Right. But probably things from house concerts to recitals to who knows if they were on a corner. I don't know.
Yeah.
And their father, I believe, he was really hustling the game for them. And so he had a great talent, and I think he was practicing hard. And by 16, he was filled. I can't remember why there was a position available at the Hochschule in Cologne. For whatever reason there was. And he was recommended, possibly by Klengel. I can't remember.
I think it was Klengel, and I think the opening was the death of Frederick Rutzmacher.
Yes, that's what it was. All those etudes I had to play
we
for
all
all those
know
years.
those names, right?
Yes. Like they feel very punishing, actually.
Every cellist suffers through those etude books.
Over and over, I still have them. But so he was 16, and then he went to Cologne, and at my grandmother's family, the Reifenbergs, were a very wealthy Jewish family in Cologne at the time. And her father, Paul Reifenberg, the family business was textiles. And at that time, his specialty was the embroidery of textiles. Oh. And actually, just the other day, I was changing my pillowcases, and I have all these of my grandmother's things. So I have her linens, which are still lovely, so I use them. And I was changing this pillowcase, and I was like, what is this? And it's a big PR embroidered into the pillowcase, which is my great-grandfather's pillowcase that I have on my bed right now. Anyway, so all this embroidery and, the pearls and these kinds of things that were, like, embroidered into all the textiles for clothing. So that was his business, and I think they had factories. The company was in Paris, was in Cologne, and somewhere else in Germany.
So they're extraordinarily wealthy.
Extremely wealthy.
Yeah. So this was this was Feuermann going up the economic ladder, so to speak, when he
socially at least to get started. I mean, so basically, I guess in that house, in the Reifenberg house in Cologne, when a famous artist or thinker or scientist, what have you, came to town, they often either stayed at the Reifenberg house, it was gigantic, or they were invited for dinner, or however it would work. But that was always a place that you went to be greeted to Cologne or whatever. And so Feuermann, my grandfather, was engaged with the Reifenberg house, whether he played house concerts there, I don't know. But and he met my great-grandmother, Emma. So when my grandfather was 16 and moved to Cologne, my grandmother was 4. She was the youngest child.
Okay. So when you say grandfather, you're talking about Emanuel Feuermann.
Emanuel Feuermann, my
Yes,
grandfather.
right, yes.
So he was 16 and my grandmother, Eva, was 4 when they met in Cologne.
Wow.
For the first time. She was a child. And but he became very much a part of the Reifenberg family. And I think my great-grandmother, Emma Reifenberg, really made sure, she really seemed to have a thing for him. And they supported him, I think, in some ways financially. And I think just provided a great deal of stability in his life. He seemed, in my impression of him, he was a little all over the place. And being that he had worked his whole life, I mean, that was like seems to be very much his ethic, this incredible
But now
work
wait,
ethic.
somewhere between 7 and 11, I think his family moved to Vienna. So where was the Reifenberg home?
Cologne.
Cologne. Okay.
So they moved to Vienna, right, for his studies or his career.
So he's still a child.
Oh,
A
yeah.
child, yes.
And he and Sigmund, his brother, the violinist, were playing concerts in Vienna. I think they were actually touring quite a bit already back then. I read it. I mean, the certain things I know from the book that they were playing the Brahms double together already and things. Yeah. So he was known. He became quite well known as a young wunderkind of the cello.
And how old was he when he and your grandmother got married?
She was around 20 or 21, so he must have been in his early 30s.
So
He was 12 years older than she was.
he knew her from the time she was 4 years old?
Mm-hmm. Well, her older sister, Lily, who must have been at least 10 years older than my grandmother, they had a fondness for each other, Lily and Feuermann. And there are tons of letters between the two of them. In those intervening years when my grandmother was like 5, before she probably even knew how to write, he always wrote
there
to
was
Lily.
a romance between
Something.
your grandmother's sister
And Feuermann.
and Feuermann, I see.
Well, I like to think so, but I don't really know what that means in 1920. Like, what does romance mean then? Is I don't know.
But at least a lot of letters between
a lot of letters, a lot of fondness, whatever happened, I don't know. But
I see.
there's his letters to her. Yeah, when she wrote to him that she was marrying Lucas, I don't remember his first name, a doctor, and he was British, I believe. Feuermann wrote back to Lily that he was disappointed, but what a lucky man, and da-da-da-da, and they maintained this friendship, and the letters continued for many, many years.
Wow.
She died. She had breast cancer, and she died, I think in the 60s, but long after he died. But, yeah, so they had a real kinship. And he also was very close to Emma Reifenberg, the mother of my grandmother.